I presume that meant starting the next day, and I probably should have.
Would you going back home or?
Someplace in Europe or something.
Oh, Europe? Oh, Europe? And that man travels. I hope I travel that much when I'm his age.
That's awesome. But that's just, I'm going to see the tour. Unless the guys riding their bikes.
However, so it's a possibility that Ellie.
Yes, I will. Three.
She still have stuff like that, but it could have been.
Just so you know, that policy that is and then I
want to add.
then you can take it. So it's 5. You give that.
Yeah. I appreciate
Or
it.
he might, 20 wanted to pull financials, is that the, are those financial ones?
Yeah.
Oh, right. When I forgot to hit send, I said, nope.
Is he surprised when he picked it off?
I don't have a base.
Confused.
And the subtopics are numbers. It's right now, a short subtopic. Yeah. You have the 5 and 9 and the 5 and the 1. That's when it's confusing. The rest of it isn't so bad. It's just on that instance where they're back to back like that, yeah.
Anything under 5 is what's that?
You can always look at it. You can always like download the actual like agenda and then you can visualize it like.
I like how it's done. You can see it. I like how it's done.
It's kind of hard to read. Bias.
Do they let you know when they're recording?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I can hear it.
See the whole
Yep.
shebang.
Okay, good evening and welcome everyone. We call the Board of Education meeting to order and we will start. I haven't had any volunteers yet, but I'm still hoping to hear from some kid groups, so spread the word. We'll start with the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Secretary. Roll. Thank you.
Christopher Abel,
Here.
Fifth Hansen,
Here.
Matthew Phipps,
Here.
Keith Shaw,
Here.
Matthew Spalding,
Here.
Carrie Trask, Tony Vostelica.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public input. Of course, individuals who wish to provide public input are asked to fill out this form and abide by the board policy 0167.3. Normal time is 5 minutes max. 30 minutes is generally allowed. I had 3 requests. Forgive me if I mess up your names. I mean no disrespect. Since mine's a word you find in the dictionary, I have a little trouble with more complicated last names. But I believe I've got them here in order. So the first one I have here is Mr. Retzinger.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Retzinger. I live at 802 Sarah Miles Court here in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And I appreciate the chance to come talk to you. I want to talk to you a little bit about the performance of children learning how to read in Manitowoc County, the Manitowoc City School District. I'm a state licensed speech and language pathologist. I have ASHA certification, American Speech and Hearing Association, with board certification. I'm recognized as a board specialist in the area of fluency disorders. In 1993, I was the first public school speech and language pathologist to be invited to speak through a juried selection over in Paris, France. worked for the, like I said, the Manitowoc County Handicapped Children's Board for 14 years, in the Green Bay School District for 2 years, Holy Family for 2 years, got fired, best thing ever happened to me. You know, I went back and got whatever I needed to do in order to open a private practice, which I ran successfully for 20 years. I served on the ASHA task force for speech services in the public schools. And my last 4 years of teaching, when I retired in 2022, I worked at the Kohler Public School District, which at the time was the #1 school district. I like to say it because I was there. It wasn't, it just is. And I received the Herb Cole Educational Foundation Fellow Award in 2022. I think that reading is the single most important skill children need to master. And I don't, this is my, in my humble opinion, not addressing this toward each and every parent in the Manitowoc Public School District. I'm not doing that. But reading skills are the single most important skill for a kid to learn. The elephant in the room, the district, I think, is the inability to motivate parents at a young age to start exposing their children to books. Research says if you're not showing your kid a book by the time they reach 3 years old, they're running up a bad tree. They can't read at grade level. By the time they reach 3rd grade, they're cooked. Reading is the key. We're failing helping our kids learn how to read. And I don't think it's the teachers, not at all. I think the #1 reason our kids aren't learning to read is because our parents, many of our parents, don't expose their kids to books or reading. They expect the teachers to do all that. A teacher can't make up what's so far behind because of what a parent has failed to do. My taxes went up last year. They're gonna go up this year. And from what I see in the paper, they're gonna go up again. Just keep going up. And I'm not against paying a teacher $100,000. I'm not against that. If they're a good teacher, I'm not against it. Right now, our kids are failing reading. And the teachers I've talked to, students that I've talked to, I've had limited conversation with a board member about it. But the #1 reason, and teachers know it, I'm assuming you guys know it, you gotta get parents more involved. Kohler had no problem at all. Those parents would come in every day wondering, what can we do to help? I know there's different status. I know there is. I got it. Somehow we have to move in the direction where you get parents to care about their children achieving in the area of reading. And it has to start even before they get to school. I think that the solution, you know, I can talk about the problem all day, but the solution involves you. You. All administrators, all assistant administrators, to make the public aware of why our kids can't read. And we've got to somehow incite parents enough to give a rip to help their kids, because they're going nowhere. You can't read, you're cooked, you're done. I know this, you know this. Parents need to start getting involved, and that can only come from you guys. Teachers tell their parents every year, read to your kid. You reading the, are you doing your homework? Are you doing it, helping them with homework? I'm done. So that's it. That's my That's my message. I think I would urge you guys to make a real effort addressing the issue of the district with parents. It's not teachers, it's parents. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, we have Ms. Post.
My name is Barbara Post. I live at 825 Wilson Street, Manitowoc. I'm still talking about the inclusion in Wisconsin, the way it's supposed to be administrated. Okay, parents and caregivers want a district that they can trust to ensure that the needs of their students are being met. They need to know the services that are available, because when I talk to parents, a lot of parents didn't know what I actually did or what was supposed to be happening. And I'm only the para. I can't be giving them information like that. So they need to know when, where, and how, and who will administer these services. They need the explanations and communication with whom they will be dealing with. Questions need to be answered, not evaded. You can't run from that. They need a reassurance that all is being done and met as promised. Students need to be excited and learning, and they have to be reassured positively, because a lot of them would be getting yelled at all the time, and that's not positive. You can't build on a negative. If they're always told no, they're going to be no. True Wisconsin inclusion ensures that all needs when they are in a peer acclimated classroom, all working together with modifications done by the teaching team. Your regular ed teacher, your special needs teacher, your EL teacher, whoever has contact with that student needs to be part of that educational plan. And this true inclusion is much easier now because you're all in your home schools. When we were out at Riverview in the kindergarten center, they had to transition to a new school and new teachers. They weren't all in there together. And that was like the major transition that nobody got. And you guys hit it right on the head. I think it was 2 months ago that everybody at elementary level was doing their own thing. And that was when I came in to go to 2 different schools. They were all on doing something else, and I was following the Wisconsin protocol, and they wanted to know what I was doing. I was doing what I was trained to do as a para. So I'm saying it should be easier now when they're all in their home school, because I don't know for sure, do they have to be transferred out of that home school now, or all their services are available there? Correct? Or not? Because that gets rid of one major transition. And you need to immediately reinstate a district-wide behavior plan, which encompasses all school, all staff, students, parents, givers, with no exceptions. All will follow the same plan. Everybody's on the same page. The school environment expectations for the playground, the classroom, field trips, sports, dances, etc., everything. Expectations coincide with the district behavior plan. So everybody, when someone is doing something, everybody knows what they're actually doing, because I don't know how many times I was in a de-escalation with a student and I got overrode. So when you're in a de-escalation and you got that student so close to being okay and somebody else jumps in, that starts the escalation all over, and you just keep continuing the pattern. So you know exactly, if you're all trained the same, you know exactly what that person is doing, and you should be able to let that para just stand back and see if she can handle what she needs to do, or he needs to do, or the teacher needs to do, and only get involved if you need to, because if they're in a major episode, you don't know what's happening, and neither do the people that are approaching you. I was called, I was weak, and I was in the middle of a de-escalation. I don't know what's happening in the kid's head. I'll talk to them after, and we can get the problem solved. So if all staff are trained the same, So one knows that what everyone is following the school imposed behavior plan. You may be put into a situation where you're all by yourself. You need to follow the plan because you can't panic. You have to follow the plan. I worked this job for 25 years. I knew exactly what I needed to do when I needed to do it. I know I had the job that no one else wanted, and that's why I was kept in behaviors. And I really appreciated the kids, but I did not like being talked down to. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I just want to say, I always stood up for the students because the students are the ones that need to go on beyond here.
Thank you. And Ms. Weinberg?
Hi, Sarah Weinberg, 2919 Jama Road, Cato, but speaking as the Manitowoc Education Association president. First off, I want to thank you for being on the Manitowoc Board of Education, being out there for public concerns and supporting public education, teachers, and students. Thank you for listening to us and working with us to strengthen the Manitowoc Public School District. You need us teachers to stand with you, especially if you're going into a referendum. We need to work on it together. We know our buildings need help, but we also know there's other things that need to happen. So we want to continue to work with you guys and really just wanted to say thank you for serving on the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That exhausts our submissions. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. I'm going to close public comment. Public input, sorry, I want to make sure I use the term that's on the agenda here. And we're going to move forward. Before we look at the consent agenda, I always like to start each meeting asking if there's any other member of the board that wants us to amend the order in any way, in case you have conflicts or time issues and you can't hear for the whole thing and there's something you want us to do early, we can easily rearrange the agenda. And I always like to start with that. Any requests to amend?
No, but I'd like to say that's commendable. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, then we're going to move on to the consent agenda. You have the consent agenda there. It has items A through I. Any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove the financial report and the self-evaluation report, please.
So
D and I, is what you say?
D and I, right?
Right.
Isn't that what you just said, Matt?
Yeah, I just want to have.
I was circling them as you said it, so crossed over. Just want to make sure. Okay. And yes, sir.
D and E, correct? D and E.
Payment of vouchers?
Yes.
Okay. So we have D, E, and I. Almost like they were trying to make a joke. Anything else?
Upper age.
H? Okay. All right, anything else? Nothing? So the consent agenda then would be to approve A, B, C, F, and G. I would be looking for a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion from Mr.
I'll
Phipps.
second.
Who was the second?
I
Mr.
will.
Stoll? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that's approved unanimously.
I'd just like to make a special, like, just a notification out there because one of our retirements on the personnel committee was a 34-year service instructional aide, and I think that's just awesome. Congratulations to Patricia.
Yeah, I agree too. And thank you for taking that point of privilege to bring that out. I appreciate that. Okay. So now, before we do the student rep report, we do the ones that were pulled, right? If I'm recalling this correctly? Yeah, so hang in there. We'll get to you. Okay, so we'll take the ones that were pulled from the consent agenda in order, and we'll start with the monthly financial report. Do you want to speak to
Thank you.
concerns?
Yeah, Angela and I have worked together for last year or so on trying to clean these reports up a little bit. So I thought it would be good to just talk through that since we have a new board member here. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of information that comes across our plate every month for approval. One of the challenges I had early on as I became a board member was just understanding, without looking at each individual bill, is this legit or not, or have we done our homework or not? So one of the ideas I had that Angela so graciously implemented was using a simple color-coded system to help us see if anything's falling outside of the normal range of acceptable values. And so in my world, green typically means good, everything's in a normal state. Red is sometimes a little bit off of what we anticipated. Red isn't necessarily bad all the time, but it's just something that might draw your attention to it and probe a little bit further if you wanted to ask some relevant questions. So with that backdrop, Angela, I had just a couple quick questions. I was looking at the total expenditures on the long-term improvement fund 46, and I noticed that that was significantly outside of what we would typically want to see as far as that variance. And can you elaborate on that a little bit and just explain to everyone why that is?
Yes, happy to. So Fund 46 is a brand new fund for us to use. So the purpose is to use Fund 46 for special projects that are included in our 10-year capital improvement plan. So when we opened up the Fund 46, there was a 5-year waiting period on it. And so last year was the first year that we really started to utilize the fund. This is the second year. So overall, there's been very little as far as revenues and expenditures going back and forth with the account. And this year, we're significantly lower on our budgeted expenses at this point, but that's mainly because projects like our internet switches, our network switches that we're replacing, and then also the JFK improvements are not complete at this point. So that's just kind of where we are to date. So that fund will tend to have more of a variance because of those factors and because it's special projects related.
Yep, yeah, thank you. And typically, there's also some notes below that too, try to capture all the talking points on that. So if you're looking at the report, it'll give you a little bit better framework on that. Angela, I did notice later in the report, there was quite a bit of red too, on pages 5, like through the end of the report really. And was there anything there that you wanted to talk through or that was a reason for concern in approving the report?
No concerns on my end. Most of it is tracking on our larger budgetary items, like your salaries and expenses, it's tracking pretty close. And your expenditures on the report are divided by instructional staff and also support service staff. And so the support service salaries and benefits are tracking very close. And then the employee benefits for instructional staff are a little higher. Not concerned about that, it's off, but not by very much. And what happens from year to year is different employees go on and off plan, so that will vary it as well. So it's not off to an extent that I'd be concerned. So, and then there are several other areas below that are marked. Your purchase services, non-capital, capital objects, insurance, and those items. Those do not cause concern just because there's always going to be a variance within what we're paying for at which time. So the timing is going to make that difficult to track year over year. So, or at the period. Overall for expenditures, we're, within we're down 1%, and then overall for revenues, we're up a little bit more. Our local sources, we've just received a lot of tax payments recently, so that'll be higher. So City of Manitowoc has paid taxes within the last reporting period, so.
Great. So overall, if I heard you right, it sounds like we're right on track with where we thought we would be with the budget. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
And then the other pieces too with budget appropriations and transfers that, that shows kind of the movement of the actual budget itself, so. Your amendment. So if you have any questions any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I just want to thanks Tony for the explanation of the green and the red. He helped me understand that when I talked to him a couple of days ago. But Angela, we listened to Heidi last month talk about the importance of the changing in the curriculum and the needs for the in-service training and all that.
Yes.
And when I went through the budget, usually the curriculum falls under 200,000, but I couldn't find it in there, and I didn't know how much money had been placed into those curriculum items, because we're gonna need a lot of money for Heidi, which I get, goes along with what Mr. Retzinger said. SFA's second year is $346,000.
Correct.
We're gonna probably need money for whatever we do with the alternative high school, so those transitions. Plus, we're adopting new textbooks. And then I see under undifferentiated curriculum, we're $173,000 in the red. So how do I not sweat and think, where are we gonna come up with all this money?
And this is current year budget, current adopted budget, so that the final document, which starts on page 12, is the transfer of appropriation. So that means when staff submit purchase orders, they're gonna say, hey, we don't have enough money in this account, so they make a transfer. So that account in itself is where they've transferred out money, so that $137,000 has come out.
That's the undifferentiated curriculum.
Yes, let me find that again.
Because we used to use that as a rob Peter to pay Paul. If you needed some money, that's what you took it out of.
And this doesn't necessarily reflect that we're low or we're at a deficit on that budget line. What it says is that we originally assigned $11.5 million to that line, but due to how they're purchasing and where the money was assigned in accounts, they're shifting it to different accounts other than that. So, from our conversation the other day too, what will happen at times is sometimes when budget holders will put things in the budget, they'll put like maybe some reserve funds aside. So that every year in some pockets to kind of plan for emergency expenditures. We keep that very, very conservative, of course. But that's an area that they've done that in the past in the district. Some buildings will do that in different pockets of areas as well, especially with what's published, that the 240 school building administration is sometimes an area where a principal may say, well, I'm gonna hold this amount in my budget in order to, just for a rainy day or something happens. And then what they'll do at this point in the year when we're closing out purchasing, they'll ask their staff, they'll say, hey, what are some additional needs that you have? And then they'll use that to take care of that at that time.
So the long and short is that
Yes.
these prices, these in-service trainings and these staff training are all taken care of. There's gonna be no deficit in what we're gonna be asking for.
Correct, and that applies more to next year's budget. So I've worked already with Heidi and Lee and Katie to talk about what they need for curriculum. They have about $75,000 annually just in curriculum training amounts. And then in addition, we're gonna be adding about $65,000 for in-service training for the new curriculum. So that's gonna be outside of that amount, so they have that.
Okay.
Then in their regular budget though, the major change that we're gonna bring to finance committee is just for SFA, just looking at the curriculum cycle and then the needs. There's a request to add $250,000 to that to make sure that we have all the money budgeted to support the costs of SFA and the curriculum review cycle.
So is that part of referendum dollars then?
Yes, well, actually we had referendum, where the CNI budget used to be there was $200,000 added this year. And then the SFA costs were budgeted and paid for out of ESSER. But then there was just sort of some adjustments that needed to be made is when we looked at this year's budget and the plan for the curriculum review cycle, there's going to be more funds needed there to make the adoption of SFA be fully funded. So.
And my other question out here was we pay dues to CISA 7, correct?
Yes.
It used to be what you referred to as a head count. Do we still pay a head count to CISA 7?
Yeah, that's called I have it up.
Because in here, I didn't see anything reported to our CISAs.
There's like a matching revenues amount that we pay every year, and that's kind of just like a general, every district has to pay that as a part of that. So we have certain things that's the CISA that we belong to, so that's where we have to pay that fee to. So that is a general cost of about $12,000 every year.
12,000 to CISA?
Correct.
For Manitowoc Public?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And then we pay CISA 10 for the staff, for the survey.
Yes,
And that was
65,000.
$65,000. And I had heard that we have a contract with CISA 6. What do we do with CISA 6?
We do a couple of things with CISA 6. So CISA 6 has a couple of small budget items, but then, just for different things like our educator, is there educator effectiveness still running out of them, or is it 7 this time?
Oh, sorry, I can't remember.
I think 7, sometimes we have that with CISA 6. I think it might be with CISA 7 this year.
Does one of you guys remember offhand? We are using CISA 6 this year, yes.
Okay, so that has stayed with them. So, and then we have some smaller contracts, but one of our largest contracts is with our communications engagement. So that is a part of that is through CISA 6.
Communications engagement, what's that?
Our communications director is paid out of CISA 6. And so we have a separate contract for that communications director that works with us.
We have a communications director for our school district
Correct, yes.
hired out of CISA 6?
Yes, yes.
And that person's employed at, what's her rate or his rate?
The original contract was for $129,000 this year, and then it had to be adjusted down to, just because of changeover staff and time available, $97,500. So, and then it's signed for next year for $108,000. So that's,
For $108,000?
correct, yeah.
We could probably add that to our agenda item for discussion.
We can, if you'd like to, and we could, I could talk to our communications director and ask for just.
What does that communications director do?
She works as a lead with our website, communications for Jim, the community connections that we put out as a district, also any referendum communications, and we do those as well.
Thank you. I have no further questions. No.
Okay.
Can I ask, is that full-time for us in this district?
It's, Jim can speak maybe a little bit more to that, but we understood it was gonna be more on a full-time basis.
It's a full-time, and it also brings the complement of other services that, that supports her.
I think, when we contract services, we're contracting to another agency. That person is also employed by that agency, so it's gonna be tough to say we're getting full-time services when you're contracted through another agency. So just point of discussion, we talk
Yeah,
about it.
no, happy to add that to the agenda.
Questions done? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the report.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka. We have a second from Mr. Shaw. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I said aye instead of I apologize. And opposed, say nay. Okay, that's accepted. We'll move on to the payment of vouchers. I believe, Mr. Shaw, you requested that one?
No, that probably was all tied into the same thing.
Okay, but we did full payment of vouchers, so we'll need a motion to accept it.
Second.
Okay,
Okay, who motioned to have done it kind of simultaneous?
Motion,
Okay.
Holden second.
so we have a motion and a second to accept the payment of vouchers. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say nay. That is accepted. Thank you. Next, we have H, out-of-state travel request.
I think we approved that already, didn't we?
No.
Oh, no, okay.
I just want to give this opportunity to speak about the great things that are happening in this community, and the coaches are here tonight, so just wanted to, if they had any questions or statements they wanted to say, I'd give them the floor to speak to it. Otherwise, I think this is an amazing opportunity for many individuals of this district and the staff as well, and just proud to vote on this. You want to say anything?
Sure. I think this will be our third year of taking this group on this spring trip, and after doing it for 2 years, Coach Hadler and our staff and our families have talked about the value that it presents itself to everybody involved. It's 4 adults taking 24 young people for a week, and it's been amazing. And we I have great people helping, and we appreciate the support, and it's something that we see ourselves doing as long as we are still doing this. But we appreciate all the support, and we'd like it to continue.
Thanks, Bruce.
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Any questions?
No questions. Thanks, Bruce.
Looks terrific.
Make a motion to approve it.
So we have a motion to approve. We have a second. We have a second, Mr. Shaw. Thank you both. Any further discussion? Therefore, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that's approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now for letter H, people non-discrimination self-evaluation.
Letter I.
Or letter I apologize. If I crossed out H, I might not have done that. Might not. Letter I. I'll let you start, Mr. Glaseller.
Thank you. I'm curious, how much staff time was spent putting this report together?
I can speak to that. This has been about the entire school year process. It's incredibly prescriptive. This is required by the DPI every 5 years. It has been required by the DPI every 5 years since 1989. We're actually on cycle 6 of the pupil non-discrimination review cycle. That's really dictated by Wisconsin statute 118.13 and the administrative rule PI 9.06, which shows that we're in the 6th cycle. It also is incredibly prescriptive in what we need to analyze. So it is a lengthy process, and it is required by DPI that we elicit a ton of stakeholder input, including teachers and counselors and athletic directors and all the things. So it has been a year-long process.
So how much of your time in the last year, percentage-wise, would you say was consumed by that?
Say we've allocated with some DPI professional development and our own need to meet, probably upwards of 20 hours,
Yeah.
about 20 hours.
Plus some support staff.
Yeah.
Also, plus also some administrative and secretarial support from schools as well. So it adds up. I mean, there's quite a bit of digging data-wise to do. And then our teams have to take that data, segregate it, match it to what they're looking at, and then we're responsible for findings and essentially recommendations for improvement in any systems that show any type of variance from
What DPI would consider to be, inequitable.
right.
So what would they consider to be inequitable?
Any discrepancy of participation for a marginalized group in academics, scholarships, advanced coursework, co-curricular activities, things like that, that would be a greater than 5% discrepancy between our main populous group, so our white students in the MPSD, and then marginalized groups that would fall under the category of various races, disability status, and EL status.
And this might seem like a dumb question, but, I read this report, and one of the things that stood out to me on, I think it was page 17, it talked about those scholarship opportunities for Black or African, Latinos, minorities. And I guess my question is, how do we know that, it's not a merit issue? It's, just the way it's worded, it kind of sounds to me like it's the state kind of pushing down some of this identity politics that we're trying to get rid of and avoid in the schools.
The state wants us to look at our systems and make sure that we are creating opportunities for all students to have access to our programs. So all we did was disaggregate the data to say, this is how many students receive scholarships, and of that, these are the various sub-marginalized or marginalized groups and what their data shows.
Yeah, I guess to me, it just seems like they're framing the question in a way that presumes or assumes that there's some underlying things that might not even be there.
And so then what they ask you to do is they ask you to take a look at that data and then look at, so like, for example, how do we notify students and families of the opportunity for a scholarship? Let's just take that as an example. So, one practice could be
rather than just doing them in homerooms where the kids are responsible for knowing that this is the application date for a scholarship, do we consider sending a letter home to make sure parents know that these are the dates, here's a scholarship application, here's the deadline, so just, casting a wider net, so to speak, on how we communicate those opportunities. Those are the kind of things that makes you think through as a result of any type of variance we see in the data.
What I'll tell you, the prompts are very general. The prompts say, look at the number of students to receive academic scholarships and break down the categories and percent of participation. The prompts really aren't leading in any one way or another. They're just simply asking us to review data and then be honest about our findings.
So is there any actual evidence that there's anything that's not up to snuff here?
I think the evidence is that some of our marginalized groups are not participating or not maybe having access to, or maybe we are not adequately informing in some way, shape, or form of some opportunities that are available to them. So we have work to do to make sure that there isn't a discrepancy in the amount of students or the type of students or population of students that are taking advantage of all the great things that we have going on.
How do we know that it's not a merit issue?
I don't know that we ever know that with any of our groups. What we need to do is just make what we can control in our school district is having systems that give information to all groups of people and create opportunities for them.
And I don't disagree with that idea at all. I think the intentions might be good. I'm just kind of concerned about, again, just the whole, identity stuff, like really, segregating people by race and like making it all about that. And, honestly, I feel like it's like a waste of time, to be honest with you.
Well, we followed what DPI requires, it's a 5-year self-assessment.
I'm not suggesting you do anything that you weren't supposed to. I'm just being honest with you on what I think. I think honestly, hearing where the state mandates us to put our resources, I'm not surprised that the reading rates in the state are where they are.
I think what the state is asking districts to take a look at is that we have systems and supports in place for all kids. And that we're making sure that, we're creating opportunities for students to take advantage of the programming that we have available. Like I said, the prompts are not leading in really any way. They're just simply asking us to take a close look at our data and take a close look at our marginalized populations and how we can support them better.
Another question I had on this report, I noticed the policies that we amended late, maybe like a month or two ago, around there, 2260 and 66. It was my understanding after that attorney from WASB came and spoke to us that the language that we removed from those policies was consistent with other policies that WASB.
The language that was removed is, you can remove whatever language you want. So when we're looking at, if you look at the third page, actually it's just under what Wisconsin state statute, it's at the beginning of the document, 118.13 in the PI 906. What we have to do is when DPI requires that we review those policies specifically because of the non-discrimination nature of them, that we are evaluating based on all of the protected classes in that category. And in honesty and in our findings, we've excluded 2 of those sections.
Can I speak on this, please?
Just a reporting those findings.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna just comment. Actually, that was the one I was waiting to comment on. I found in your findings in there that you stated that we, in 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex to exclude language around sexual orientation and transgender. And that is incorrect. We went exactly with the statute. We did not remove or exclude anything on sexual orientation. We did remove the transgender wording in there because that is literally what is in the Wisconsin State Statute 118.13. And that is exactly what we're following. And that is exactly what you in here suggested we follow. So I would move that we have that part removed because that last part and transgender is not within the statute.
I will take a closer look at that policy.
That's statute.
Yeah,
What page of the report are you on, sir?
This would be page 8. Under summary, report data, findings, first point, last sentence.
Hang on, I'm scrolling down there. Okay, it's labeled page 7, gotcha.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's numerated 8 and
Yeah,
it's by the counter thing on the thing, but it's.
I think it was because of the cover page and my way I was looking at it.
Right, and under findings,
Correct.
which bullet?
First bullet, last sentence of that bullet. And that last word, actually, technically, because if you look under Wisconsin State Legislature, the docs.legis.wisconsin.gov and read that, it labels everything in there exactly the way that we have it labeled at the beginning of this document. And it states, because of the person's sex, race, religion, national origin, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital, or parental status, sexual orientation, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. Now, where in the statute does it say the word transgender? That's why I would like to
There
have
was
that.
language removed from the policy, though, the Neola policy that was recommended.
We removed it from the Neola policy that was recommended, and we followed the Wisconsin state statute. Yes, correct.
And I guess my point from earlier was that the WASB policies don't even have that language. So there's got to be other districts in the state that have a similarly worded policy.
We were just evaluating ours.
I'm still trying to understand exactly what you're asking us to change your
Well,
motion. Because you moved that it
it's in the beginning of the findings, it said, and in the beginning of the report, it talks about following Wisconsin State
Yeah, yeah.
Statute 118.13.
I get that, I just want to know here on findings, what exactly?
The last,
amended.
the first bullet, the last 2 words, and transgender.
Okay,
Those 2 words are not in the statute. Those are the 2 words that we removed from the Neola policy. And that is exactly why, because we were sticking with the Wisconsin
and
state
that's what you're
statute.
moving, we strike.
Correct.
Okay, so we have a motion, but to amend it, we need a second for that. You're going to second?
Yep.
Okay. Now I'm happy to continue this conversation, just because you had said I would move that we, and I was trying to get
Right.
it down exactly what you moved.
And I would like to just preface that by saying that it does state in the beginning of this report that we did, that that's what we're trying to follow, is the Wisconsin state statute. And it's not something, the statute, you can add words in at any point in time, and that was our whole reasoning for changing the Neola verbiage, was instead of stepping into grounds to where we don't know, and until they change that statute, then this is what we need to follow. So whether we agree with it or not, if that changes in the statute, then we got to go along with that. I completely understand. But as of right now, in that statute, it has these labels. And actually, on page 4 of the report, it has the statute worded out with every single thing on there. And she even has it written in there without the word of transgender. But for some reason down there in the findings, it says that we removed that and we should do something about that. But our whole point was to stay with the statute. That's why I moved it.
Okay.
So with discussion for what you're speaking of right now, there's a few other positions that says gender identification. I would ask to remove that as well. However, I believe I'm just voting no for this whole report. That's my stance on it. Because of what you've said as well, Mr. Spalding and Mr. Vitskoka, as well as I personally will not be taking liability for the vote yes on this, because I believe if you do vote yes, you are being discriminating towards other people's religions, their personal beliefs, to identify that you can have more than 2 sexes. So I will be voting no for this, and I will not be taking responsibility of the district moving forward if they do want to go down that road. So
I'm
been kind of used to that. I'm a white Christian male, and I've been
I was talking about other religions
Yes.
besides Christianity as well.
beat up for the last decade. So absolutely, but I completely agree.
So that's the discussion on his motion.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? No further discussion on the motion, so the motion before us is to strike the words "and transgender" on, depending upon how you look at it, page 7 or 8 of the document. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And no?
No.
I don't remember the rules at a wash.
I'm expecting you to
And
know
watch it
these
as
rules,
well.
Chris. That's why I suggested. No, I'm just kidding.
A tie without a majority is a failed motion.
So the motion failed.
Correct.
Okay.
So I would like to move forward in making a motion to
Trying to get this
Yeah.
straight.
vote on the whole report.
Oh, sure, go ahead and move that.
Motion to vote on the whole report.
Okay, now are you making a motion to approve or
Deny.
to deny?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny the report. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny. Any other discussion?
So for clarity, an aye denies it and no approves it.
Absolutely. Since the motion is to deny, if you vote yes, you're voting not to accept or approve the report. Yeah, it's a strange
Yes.
one when you think about that. Any other, did you want to discuss any further on your motion? I didn't want
Just elaborating that I will be voting yes to not approve it because of the basis of discrimination on people's religion. And I believe that we'll be going down that road quite quickly if we're trying to protect a marginalized group, but at the expense of a different group. So I think that's the politics and the identity that we didn't want to get into. And I think this is being thrown right at us again. And I think it's sad that we're discussing it right now. However, it's being thrown conveniently in our lap right at the moment.
We have to have it approved by the end of May. So unfortunately for the timing, it has to be served in PI.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm representing the group that will be directly affected by this, I'm just confused how this is discriminatory towards religions.
But I'll give an example for if he was a Christian, if he believes there's only a man and a woman, that'd be discriminating that if somebody can identify as a different sex when they weren't that sex, that's discriminating his Christian belief. If you were a Muslim and you left to believe the same thing, you'd be discriminating against the Muslims that believe that there's a man and a woman. So like by adding the verbiage of how you want to identify that day, that's discriminating his group or my group or Chris's group. So you can't keep on marginalizing different groups to try to protect them without infringing on the rights of the other groups. That's my point of view.
Yes. I will also be voting aye to deny just because of the multiple inaccuracies according to what we put in towards the policy and what we removed. So that's my.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I talked to a lot of people in recent months, and, many people in our community really want traditional values in education, right? So by traditional values, reading, writing, arithmetic, right? And when you start going down this path of, all this, identity politics in the schools, DEI, whatever you want to call it, it really turns a lot of people off, right? And we have a lot of work in front of us, and including major issues with our buildings. We're gonna have to go back to taxpayers and ask for significant help on this. And what I'm suggesting to my peers on the board, if you really want to unite the community, we have to focus on what we have in common. It's going to bring us together, right? So we all want to solve this building problem, but not everyone's going to embrace DEI and all the state mandated stuff just because they should throw it down our throats, right? Now, I'm not saying, really, I'd like to tell the state to pound sand, but we might not be able to do that. It's looking funding. So we have to find a way to placate them, but still ensure that we're not poisoning our kids' minds with this identity crap, and work together to solve the real problems that we have in our community instead of wasting staff time looking for problems that probably aren't even there.
Thank you.
I think there's a tremendous difference between personal ideologies, political ideologies, and not wanting to follow state guidelines and rules and regulations. We are a district in the state. The state sets rules and regulations. The state sets format. The state sets policy. As a district in this state, it is our obligation to follow that. Forgetting political, religious ideologies is what the state requires. We're required to follow those reports. I don't see the issue. You could have your own political ideologies. You can have your own religious ideologies, but this is a state formatted process that we have to follow every year. It's been in the laws. I just don't see the big issue of making it political and personal ideology.
Thank you. So with that being said, I'm assuming you're going to vote aye to deny this?
Absolutely not. I'm voting.
Oh, I thought you said that because we're following the state, what they're talking about, that, because this is not.
I'm voting against his motion.
Oh, well, you voted against the amendment either, as well, too. So either way, you're voting against, going against the.
Voting against the amendment, or his motion.
The amendment is to follow statute, so you're voting against that.
What I will do is clarify the language in the policy and change that. That can be a non-issue. And if the language is incorrect in these findings, then I will make sure I go back to our policy and review exactly what the language says.
I know some of my peers may revere the state more than I do, but I just like to point out that following the state guidelines, I believe the average in the state is only about 38 or 39% reading proficiency grade level. So, you know, the state's not always right about everything. That's my point.
Touche. Yeah, that's on that.
I call the question.
Do we have a second?
We don't
to call
have a
the
second,
question?
you're right.
Okay. You're trying to get my thing in the meeting queued up. Okay.
Doesn't pay.
Any further discussion?
I would be open to making an amendment if, or rescinding my motion if we were gonna make the correct changes. Obviously, because she said that it has to be done at the end of May. So we can vote on it and then we can move on to try to make an amendment.
Did you want to elaborate on what you mean by amended?
If there is inaccurate language, I will verify with the board policy and I will update that language in that findings section on page 7 or 8.
Or with
whatever one it
throughout
is.
the report. It was a really long report. There might have been other ones, but.
It has to be, that was the only place where that policy was specifically referenced. And
Okay.
there should be accurate language. So if there is an inaccurate language, then I will go ahead and we will make those changes.
Okay.
That's not a big deal.
I am personally okay with that, and then I would be okay with voting for accepting the report. Unlike other people, I understand that, but my whole point is I understand that this is mandated by the state. So, under Wisconsin statute. So, yeah, I go with that.
Okay, so procedurally now, you need to either withdraw your motion or change your motion to accept the report with the changes being made as promised.
After we vote on it, can we make another motion, obviously, to amend it?
Well, you said you would go through and
Yeah,
fix.
that can just be part of discussion. If there's an inaccuracy, I will verify and I'll make sure that that's communicated out, that if there is an inaccuracy, that it's updated and I will share
Okay,
what I used to verify that information.
yeah, so you'll get all that after they go through and make sure that it's all fixed.
So we're accepting it contingent upon the amendment.
Yeah, contingent upon amending it to reflect what we've done.
Can I just rescind it?
So is Matt withdrawing his motion then?
That's where we're getting, yeah.
Chris, I'm asking a question.
Yeah, so you can either rescind it or you can change it to now moving with that understanding. So you can do either one. If you rescind it, then we just go to no motion until somebody moves to accept.
I'll rescind my motion.
Okay.
Okay, so it's rescinded. Now, I'll make a motion that I will accept the report contingent on corrections within the document referring to following the state statute throughout the report with gender identity and transgender.
Got it. I'm okay with that.
And you're gonna
I'll
keep your second?
Yep. I'll keep
Okay.
my second.
So we have that to accept it with those changes being made.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get the motion here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Lori. We don't sometimes think that she's trying to keep up with.
Yeah. And still, it's better than if you like, type do it for you.
Yeah.
So,
And just to be clear, the correction that I will make is including the verbiage that is exactly what the board passed previously
Correct.
as our verbiage.
Right.
So, okay.
explicitly
We'll
stated in there.
explicitly state the group or the groups that were excluded from that.
Okay, so I'm gonna vote against it. I'm gonna tell you why. Tony, a lot of people talk to you, as you said, and we're talking about this. We just had 2 elections where the community said, get this out of the schools. Go back to just educating kids.
Correct.
All right?
Awesome.
Exactly. But tonight, you're putting it back in.
No, we're trying to take it out.
No, you're saying, you're dividing us again by bringing this up and saying, you know, this is bad and transgender is bad and religion, we have to, religion is great, but everybody thinks about that differently. Now, I realize that in November, we may have a change in Washington, but there was just a federal law to treat transgender adults. It wasn't a law, it was an action by the president, like all presidents do, that said you have to do that.
Correct.
Okay, until that changes, they're a protected class, like it or not.
Our state government is always going to.
Our state government, does the federal go over the state or the state go over the federal? I don't know.
Well, read the Constitution and I guarantee you it'll tell you.
It's not always the case. You know that. It's not always the case. But what I'm saying is this is just, we're putting this in the process of just giving our kids the best education we can. And you can talk about.
I'm just trying to cooperate here. If you want to make it worse, we can continue to do it, I guess.
It's already been worse. I'm voting against this.
Accepting.
Do you have anything you want to say?
No.
No. Anybody else? Because I don't want to stifle discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say to that, if respectfully, people have different views, but they're still, and I'm not gonna sit here and just take stuff from the state just because they say, hey, I'm the state, right? The state's wrong. The state blew reading, right? So they're not always, it's not the holy grail of everything. And that's my point.
Well, reading, Tony.
If only 38 or 39% of kids are reading at grade level across the state,
It's across the nation because of COVID.
that's public education, dude. That's the state of public education. All right, and you know why? And here's why, because we focus on crap like this instead of reading, right? I agree.
Adults.
Yeah.
That's important. You done?
Good.
Okay. All right, Brett, I want to make sure everybody was done because I don't want to stifle anything, but I will say that I would have accepted the original report. I trust the work that will be done by our administrative team, so I will accept the report as they amended. So I will be voting in favor, and in a large part, because not one, we have to get to them by the end of the month, and another part because I guarantee you, we have all just spent more time on it than DPI will in Madison, where it will get placed in a folder. Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed?
No.
Could we see the names, please? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You're just making sure we got you. I appreciate that. Okay. We're done with the consent agenda and we get to go on to the student representatives report. Doo-doo-doo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Winona Grossman, and I'm a student representative subbing for Ellie Reed, who unfortunately cannot be here today. To start off with current Lincoln news, students are wrapping up their AP or advanced placement testing this week. Testing for various AP classes have been going on since last week, so we are all looking forward to the LHS prom this Saturday evening. In honor of our 100-year celebration, the theme of our prom is Roaring '20s Great Gatsby. We also distributed the John Ricky t-shirts from our John Ricky Memorial Scholarship fundraiser. I am happy to announce that we raised over $1,200 just in direct t-shirt sales. These funds will go towards scholarships for students pursuing further education in environmental science. As a final event put on by Student Senate, we are hosting a blood drive this Friday. Towards the end of the month, we will be meeting with Representative Tittle when we visit Madison as a Senate. I'm also thrilled to announce that the school board committee is being presented with the Democracy in Action Award this Thursday by the League of Women's Voters of Manitowoc County. This achievement is due to the organization of our second candidate forum this past school board election. We plan to continue these forums in the future as a way to engage our school board members with our community. So a big thank you to the League of Women's Voters. During this past school board committee meeting, we were able to talk to Chris and Biff about the results of the building audits and the possibilities of what our school could look like in the future in terms of repairs. As a committee, we were able to ask some questions surrounding about how we, or our parents, I should say, invest our money into schools. It was a very insightful discussion as students were able to learn about how the board weighs the many aspects of how they determine what is prioritized to be fixed in our buildings. We also lightly touched on culture in our school and in our district and what we can do to improve it for the future. That is all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions for you?
You were too thorough.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to number 7, the report of the superintendent.
The board has asked that I provide an update on our priority goals. And just wanted to share with you, I hope you had an opportunity to read the article, and if you didn't, on the SFA, in this whole science of reading, it's important to note that over 30 years, this has been a hotly contested subject. And essentially there's 5 pillars that are into this whole, teaching reading. 2 of them, phonemic awareness and phonics, have been the controversial issues where some have suggested that this doesn't belong. Even back 20 years ago or 24 years ago, when this again surfaced, and it got solidified that, in terms of the science reading, the co-founder of Success for All was invited to be on there, but he declined because this had already been proven even years before. So this debate, has prolonged. And so it's just a piece of information there. I think it's beneficial to understand, and really concludes with, and he's passed, by the way, just recently here in the last couple of years. He identified what's not included sometimes when we're talking about the science reading is the teachers in the systems in terms of what goes into supporting the instruction in the classroom. And I think that's reflective of all the other things besides just the reading component of Success for All. Cooperative learning, behaviors, all the solutions things are contributing factors here in terms of the grouping, in terms of getting the return. All those things play a critical role, and he's cited research many years back that would identify that you have groups proven that they're implementing the science of reading, back then different terms, correctly, and others who are claiming that they're implementing it and they fail. And that's where it comes back down to the teachers make a critical difference here in the systems that they use to implement. So just wanted to highlight that for you. The staff culture, I just, again, with hats off to the HR department in terms of a lot of feedback. They arrange for box lunches, be delivered throughout the week. And then specialized cookies that were developed, with nice little pencil figure. Really received a lot of feedback on it. So just hats off to our HR department for that extension on behalf of both administration and the board in terms of our appreciation. And the last item, and Angela will speak a little bit of this too when she talks about budget, but in the facilities, it's really important that we start working on some of the stuff that we can sooner than later. And so one of the things that has surfaced is borrowing, potential borrowing 5 to 15 million. Angela's looking at that right now, and she'll be coming back through the committees. But that's right now in terms of if we can start the work, because the lead time sometimes that is required, we should get to it. And so that's just something that right now is on our plate that we're looking to advance through the committee to the board.
Thank you.
Jim, any pulse on how the Q4 numbers look yet, or how they might look?
You know, we don't, you know, we're all feeling like it's just going to be another, you know, but we don't. You know, we will be reporting now that was identified in the director's reports where they identified, you know, as soon as that information comes out, we'll be reporting out on our assessments, you know, both SFA and in terms of the forward and the like, so.
Anything else? Okay, so now we have the central office update.
Central office update, you know, previously I had put out there, you know, that I was going to restructure and I got some good board feedback on it and decided not to go down that path. So there isn't a recommendation for a restructuring. You know, essentially we just eliminated a position and we're grouping up kind of similar how we done work before with our 3 directors involved in the instructional side of this, with Katie with student services and Lee and Heidi splitting up the work where Lee is going to be overseeing secondary and Heidi elementary and both the sharing on SFA relative to the elementaries and the middle school. So pretty traditional in how we've handled in the past. We're proceeding in that way and they're now working back through the committee structure. So.
Nothing's changing then?
No, other than some savings. That's because we're not replacing that position.
Okay, now the always exciting budget update number 3. Lee was a hit song.
Short update here right now, just because a lot of things are going on. Budget managers around the district, building leaders have been working on building the budget and updated the process a little bit to collect more just detailed information. So I included the survey information at the bottom, and then some things are, you know, show action needed, like allowing people to see more information in Skyward and activity like that. So I have some things planned for that. I do need to collect feedback based on after the budget building process, if people felt that it was more effective, if it was helpful. I need feedback for next year for planning. I mean, it's fresh top of mind now, being like that. So they're in the process of entering things into Skyward currently, and then Rob and I will work to make sure all revenues and all other aspects of the budget are entered. We're working for sort of finalization of all staff compensation areas, so we can pull that along with benefits into the budget through Skyward as well. So, you know, goal is by the end of July to have the first preliminary budget ready for committee to review. So we're on target for that. And just in advance of that, as soon as I'm able to, I'm looking at our projections, you know, just where everything is going to fall, so we can have a better idea regarding the borrowing. So the good news is that several items are coming in underneath what I projected, so that always helps a lot. Our transportation, which will come to the Finance and Buildings and Grounds Committee, is a 0.5% under where I projected it. Staffing is lower overall from what we had initially projected. And then that'll balance some other needs that we have. Our health insurance, also we're having a great year with health insurance. I found that out in the last day or two. And so, you know, we have to, for the borrowing piece, we have to look at not only what's going to happen this coming year, but we also have to look for the next 3-4 years. The other critical piece for that, and I didn't include this in my report, is that the 5th year of my projection has a deficit of $17-18 million because our operating referendum falls off. So, you know, we just have to keep the big picture in mind. So whenever you take on an obligation like that, we never take it lightly. So we can project pretty closely for what we're going to have in the coming years, but we just have to think globally as well.
Any questions? Okay, well, thank you, staff. Keep taking your vitamin C. We appreciate it. Sure.
Angela, I'm sorry. So you mentioned when that operating referendum wraps up, how are we in a position financially if that, let's just say we don't get another operating referendum, right? Are we going to be
Hurting badly.
Yeah, let's see.
Are we going to be over? Are we going to have? Are we going to be able to cut costs? I guess if we get to that point.
Not to that level. because our operation, just the gap for districts, and this is, we're not alone, statewide, is growing and growing and growing because they've not kept up with the pace for funding per pupil over time. So, right now, the running total is, it's like, I want to say it's $3,000 range per student behind the rate of inflation for what we've received in the state. So the funding system, severe issues, and the challenge is that less referendums are passing as well, just statewide. There's just, and the needs are growing. So we're fortunate that we have it in place, but as we talked about through the referendum process, we have to be very careful, with our mill rate and what we're going out to taxpayers for, and not levying the full amount if we do not necessarily need it. So I'm able to put that into the projection model to see where the tax rate will come out with the budget figures that we have in there to keep the impact as minimal as possible, and close to what we talk to voters about.
The complexity is pretty significant here with, as we're looking at facilities, will we need if that were coming, not this next April, but we start, looking at options, and then maybe the following April, well, that's a year before we go for the renewal of the retiring operating referendum. Now that's 2 years ahead, because that gives Angela a second year, in case that would fail. But you can see how complex this gets, in terms of if you're delaying facilities, or this is really going to be some challenging work ahead of us in terms of really, understanding how these things fit together and how one triggers something else.
And over that period of time, you do your best to project, and we're coming out really good overall. So one thing we'll know more at that time is, the amounts that we had projected for the operational referendum this time. We may be able to say, well, we were $2 or $3 million too high, because we didn't know what we were going to get in state per pupil. So then we might be able to bring that down. So we'll have more information then, compared to what we have now. So we continue to watch that and do the best we can with that.
Yes. Thank you for doing this, Angela. I'm just a little concerned with money being, not a big supply, that when we present the information, budget, building status, all the questions are geared towards, subjective opinions, they're all just saying, how do we feel about this, and how you felt. Wouldn't we want to be more objective in asking them, are you being supplied with what you need? Yes or no, or kind of like more straight instead of more just opaque. How do you feel about this? Doesn't that seem like we don't have enough money as it is? And then because how do I feel? I would like more money every day, but do I need more? Maybe not. So I just don't understand why it's geared so much to feelings.
Oh, I guess part of my approach in this, and I apologize if it came off, is that when I was, the thing is when I send a district-wide survey out, there's the reality that some are involved in the process and some are not. And when you talk to secondary schools is the biggest example. If you say to the science department, hey, what are your ongoing expenses every year? Mm-hmm. A lot of times they'll say, no, we don't know, or, oh, we just kind of order them as we need them. And really you want them to be able to say, well, we need this for this unit, we need this for this, and then you can do things where you can, you revisit it every year, but people were essentially telling me through the questions or how I interpreted the response and how I designed the questions that in some cases, they're not quite sure that they could make a list of everything they need for the entire year to deliver their instructional program. That's sort of what I was trying to get to. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I hear what you're saying as far as just going from the more emotional piece of it.
That's all I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I just wanted them to have a voice. That was important to me because I think sometimes, the feedback will be like, well, no one came and asked me, and the year before we had a very rushed process with the budget. So, and I wanted to make sure that we had extensive time to allow those conversations to take place. And so I could see that there was a gap, and especially with how we've changed budgeting over the last couple of years between grant funding, pandemic, lots of change in staff. So I wanted to sort of own the gap and make sure that we
Well, thank you for that.
allowed to work on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I think, you know, we really need to be smart about how we go about this. And I think we are for the most part, you know, building the case with the building, studying everything, but, you know, we really gotta, in the meantime, collaborate and keep these scores rising, because I think that's gonna really make the case for the community. You know, keep the focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and show them that everything's getting better in our district. And I think we could pull this off, but it's gonna take a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
And I would say, if I didn't make it clear, we gotta have at least a couple years between those referendums. You do that every year and people get burned out.
Agreed. And that was one of the reasons we did 5 years this time, but the timing with the capital, sometimes you don't know where that's gonna land, and we can definitely talk about how we approach that, and nothing's locked in stone with when we're going for this either at this point. So when we know more about the borrowing, that'll help inform other decisions. So I think what I've noticed personally through the process is that we started this facility audit thinking like, okay, we don't really know exactly what our needs are, and then we've sort of funneled down every step of the way. We feel we know a little bit more, and I feel more confident about, okay, now we need to do this. So, and then even just on these building budgets, you know, I'll be able to provide information for you, for the board, so you can see what's included in them and have a little more information regarding that. And, you know, conversations about more needs in other areas, you know, like the curriculum is great. I mean, we have a curriculum review cycle. We've needed that. And so we, you know, these are things that I think we're having great conversations, and I feel like we're more planned in advance than we've ever been on a lot of this. So that's really, hats off to everyone in the district who's contributing to that. It's a team effort.
Mr. Hanson.
I understand the borrowing. Where are we as far as deciding what we're gonna borrow for? Have we started putting a committee together? I mean, if we're gonna talk about a capital referendum and stuff, we need to let the public know that we've looked at the report and gone over it and decided what's good and what's bad for our district within that report. So are we at a point where we're gonna form that committee to start looking before we start
We have a
borrowing money?
We have a district advisory committee that's looking at some of those things now, and it's definitely in the plans to bring community in. We're just not ready yet. We need to have our ducks in a row to make sure that we know what we want to propose as a direction on that. So,
Then I would suggest that advisory committee come up with different options so the public doesn't come in and say, well, the decision's done, why am I participating?
One of the things, Mr. Hanson, that we are looking at internally with the identifying for the board, you know, what appears to be 4 or 5 options, you know, for your consideration to open up to the public, you know, to then have them start weighing in. So between now and next April, start doing that. The borrowing was only short-term, saying we do know of some of our facilities, like Jefferson, our newest building, is going to be part of, you know, a plan where bringing that up to speed, you know, was that kind of $5 million mark, you know. So there are some things here that we're already understanding in terms of some available options, but then more work, because there can be a number of options, you know, too. And what's the challenging here is not doing some of that legwork in advance, you know, versus opening up to the public without having some of those ideas and not being able to answer even questions. So they're suggesting just a lead time, you know, to be able to provide you with more detailed analysis of what's in that report.
I was just gonna suggest, Biff, I don't see why we couldn't do that in the Finance and Buildings Committee, right?
I'm sure.
I don't see why you couldn't either. I just want to make sure the public has input. You know, I understand what you're saying about Jefferson, but if we have other buildings in need, that we can still use them and teach them. I mean, $5 million is a lot to shove into one building. So I guess it'll be interesting to see the logic behind some of the decisions. I just want to make sure the public gets to have input into part of that before we start borrowing and spending the money. Thank you.
Just wanted to request that you put it on the agenda for finance and building growth.
One of the things that, and I think I've talked to Chris, I probably mentioned this to Tony in conversation. When Superintendent Holzman, when we went through the process to change from a pure elementary, a K-6 program to the middle school program, through the superintendent's office, he brought out about 4 different plans that was presented to the board and to the district. The 4 different plans delineated possibly moving a couple of neighborhoods to alleviate overcrowding in one elementary, to moving another barrier from another elementary, so that the board continually saw what a shift of 2 blocks would mean. One of the most intriguing plans that he brought to us after doing all this, and like I said, I think he had 4 plans that he brought to us. One of them was to take a look at breaking the north side, south side, the barrier between the north side, south side. Washington would have been a 5-6 center. Wilson would have been a 7-8 center. That got a lot of attention, got a lot of interest. These are the kind of options that I think that somebody needs to start recreating again. Building, if we move an elementary boarding a population by 3 blocks, and we move a 5th grade because our population is getting smaller, do we need to spend $100,000 in the Washington pool? Because in a 5th, 6th grade curriculum, there's no swimming. So maybe the 7th, 8th grade pool at Wilson is extremely valuable because the 7th and 8th grade curriculum has swimming. Those are the options that I think that this committee or whoever is going to do it has got to start bringing to this board and into the reorganization so we can look at all these alternatives.
I completely agree with that. We as a board right now can make it a directive to the superintendent to present us 3 or 4 options. We can do that, not at this particular, because it's information discussion, but maybe if Mr. Abel will allow us to.
But I think you're right, coming out of our committee.
We can do it right now, though. He needs a directive to do it, though.
Well, the superintendent already said that he's going to be bringing forward several options. And I don't think it's necessarily just 4 options, but maybe 4 options for part of it and 4 options for other parts of it. Right now, what's going on with the internal facilities group is after a full report, that's CO, that's also people from buildings, because well-intended as CISA 10's efforts were and thorough as they were, people who work in a building every day could very easily go, whoa, they've got this like number 7 on the list, and this needs to be number 2. So you want that information in there too, and that's really what they're working on compiling now before they come to us with further stuff. But I feel confident there's going to be lots of opportunities.
But I think, that to come up to the public and say, oh, we need $100 million or whatever it is, and then in 5 years, the population has shifted so greatly that we're going to close down an elementary. Why did we spend $35 million to remodel that elementary when we may not need it?
Yeah.
Because of the population shift.
That's exactly,
yeah.
Those are the considerations of giving you more information to be able to adjust. You're right on,
Okay.
Mr. Shaw, in terms of, what we're looking at in terms of that you need.
But if I could just add real quick, guys, I think Viv was asking about, the funds going to Jefferson. And I think part of the reasoning for that, if I remember the report right from our CISA guys, was that was a newer building that they felt fairly confident wasn't going anywhere. And, part of these upcoming discussions is we're going to have to really think through and talk through, what's going to be here long-term, or does it make sense to invest now? Because you don't want to invest in a building that, may not be part of the long-term plan, right? So I think the sooner we have those conversations, the better, because we got to start having them if we're going to get this thing out into the public.
Yeah, and Jefferson was also a place where I know it seems ridiculous to say, one to $2 million, where we would get the most effect for that kind of money over a summer than at other buildings was another reason why that was one of the top choices to address it this time. You know, get the most use for that money. But
But according to the report, if you don't shove money into Madison, that's the school, you know, what I'm saying is, where do we get the best bang for our buck across the district? It's not gonna be easy getting money from taxpayers. Their city taxes went up, their county taxes are gonna go up. Their school taxes went up last year. So we've got to do our due diligence to find where we can get the most for the money that they're willing to give us. And that's not going to be easy to do, John.
Mr. Abel?
yes, I'm sorry.
I think a good start with that, Mr. Shaw just said, is we need to have a cohesive plan within, you know, with options that are presented to the public so that we can all wrestle with the idea. I don't think should say, I won't accept a referendum unless we make, I won't vote yes for a referendum unless we make changes that are appropriate for our enrollment going down and our fund balance, you know, going down, and our costs just skyrocketing. So, and I don't think many other people are going to support it as well, unless we have those conversations in committee or in committee as a whole.
Good. Okay, let's go on to the director's report then. You have it before you, and I see here that the directors will be happy to address any questions from the report because they trust you've read it carefully. So any questions? Anybody? Bueller? Thank you. All right, it was a very good report. I enjoyed it. We're going to go then to, oh, yes, please, I'm sorry.
Does everybody believe that they're confident with the change of operations with not having an assistant superintendent at this point?
Are you mean in terms of how we are laying out things? Yeah, you know, we were able to have some collaborative conversations about how we're gonna diffuse some of those responsibilities. We feel really good about where we're at with that.
You do too? Thank you.
Quick poll.
That's a good call, yeah.
Okay, well, next it's the district activity update, and it's that time of year. So brace yourselves. Of course, you saw all the events that are happening at Lincoln High School this week, and even more next week. So a lot of fun there for the board directly, of course. On the 15th is the Youth Apprenticeship Awards at the Capitol Civic Center. On the 22nd is the Senior Scholarships and Awards Night at the Lincoln High School Auditorium. On the 29th, it's the Quarter Century and Retirement Celebration back at the Capitol Civic Center. I like when we have things that I can walk to. On the 30th, we have McKinley graduation at 5 p.m. And of course, on June 7th, the day she's just dying for, the Lincoln High School graduation at 1 p.m. in the bowl. So, you know, you can send out invitations on all those too, just so that you get those all on your calendar for the ones you want to attend. If you need any questions or anything, reach out. Next, we move on to the unfinished business, and the first one is the McKinley Charter recommendation. Come on.
Yeah, we had recommended last time, you know.
Yeah, I don't have any new documents. It was.
So there's.
Yeah, it's just if you
There's
have
no
any
action
further
this time?
questions, what we were hoping is that you could take action and make a decision tonight on moving forward, and so we can plan ahead for whatever that looks like.
I'll start. What Mr. Shaw said last meeting, just it haunted me for the last few weeks about how the stuff was in place last time. And all the boxes were checked, but it didn't come to fruition, you know, a number of years later. So that just, it didn't, it just scared me that, we can have everything ready and then it not work out in a few years. And then I kind of alluded that it was a personnel issue. I'm completely confident with personnel at this time. It's just, just kind of stayed with me with your comments about how it was in order when it was presented. Everything was checked, but then the follow through just didn't come. So just want to let you know that.
Do we have,
Yeah, so just a reminder, I'd given I'd answered some board questions about some systems and we looked at some different funding opportunities. I did also attend the McKinley board meeting, the last board meeting, and talked with their board and answered questions that they had. So everyone, all the stakeholders in the school and in our school community know and understand what the question is here. And again, it's, the bottom line is you're either going to vote to disband the charter, which would happen after this next school year. So again, remember, no matter what happens, it is in place this next school year, in which we'll work with the board to work on some of the governance things that are required. And then it would be, if you chose to not disband, then the charter is good through 2026. And the district would have to make a decision in 2026 as to the future of the charter. And those are essentially your choices. And, as you remember, I made the recommendation to you in a memo form dated April 19th with some rationale as to why, well, it was actually to Jim, but also to you, of why I believe that we could reduce some redundancy, duplication, make sure that we're compliant with what it is we're trying to do with the charter requirements and address some of the lack of systems of governance that we have. That my recommendation was that we disband the charter.
Yes. So, Mr. Tennis, with your elaborate discussion last time, you pretty much told me, and we kind of came to the conclusion that it was on you either way.
Correct.
So I completely support your recommendation in this point in time, because ultimately it falls on the requirements or the responsibility of you. And I don't see how doing double duty is going to help the district in the long term, if we can meet those services within MPSD as it is.
I as well, I'm gonna go with his professional opinion.
Yes. Lee, quick question. I'm looking at that page on the grants,
Yes.
page 2,
Yes.
and I could be remembering this wrong, but I thought that McKinley wasn't eligible for that grant because they were existing, but it looks like they are, or it's that box.
Well, they would be eligible by if they were expanding or they were new.
All right.
Yeah, but that is the case at this moment in time.
Okay, so that's, even with that possibility, it's just not worth it financially, it sounds like, with.
Correct. We would have to expand the programming, which would mean we would be incurring a lot of costs that would have to be sustained through multiple budget cycles.
Sure.
So if we're going to take, for example, a 9-12 school and make it a K-12 school, that means that's an expansion, which means sure you could apply for dollars, but remember those are startup costs. They don't give you the money to fund it beyond the beginning, right? So and then that's where we're at right now. We don't have any of the monies that were left from the beginning of the charter available to us to spend on anything. Right, it's now incurred by district funds. All of the costs to run this program are covered by the district at this point.
Are there grant funds available? Do we have a grant writer? Does Metro Public School District have a grant writer?
We've done some of our own grants, but, quite often some of us, have contracted with CISA 6. We haven't specifically, but we've submitted some of our
You
own.
wrote a grant for Washington.
Yep, and Heidi just submitted a grant for something too. So like we dabble in the granting where we can, right? And then we'll get help from other organizations. So for example, I partnered with the Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
They helped me write the grant.
So is there a chance to dabble with some grant money to get, if we change over to help with these costs for the transition?
Well, the key is eligibility. the district's eligible to apply for any of these grants that are listed on here, as well as McKinley. So these are all things that were, if, for example, the grant that I did apply for was the Nita M. Lawley 21st
Is that
Century.
the one you did in Washington?
Yeah. So, these are the grants that are available.
And then we can reapply for those?
Of course.
Okay.
So, and what Tony asked you about kind of caught my eye too, that an expansion. My concern is, do we have any programs right now for K to 8 kids? We had that unsuccessful Zoom virtual school, but sitting in the meeting that night with the parents, there were parents there that didn't want to send their kids back to regular schools because they got called every day to come and pick them up because they weren't behaving. They're not kids that have an IEP. They're kids that have trouble in a regular school. So how are we going to service them in the district? We have a alternative high school for kids who need that now. What do we do for these kids? And that's why when I looked at that, I thought, well, there's $1 million if we can come up with some kind of program, an expansion. But I just worry about those kids that we don't have programs. We can't just keep calling mom and dad and say, come and pick up Johnny every day. So are we exploring that? Are we looking at that? Is that, we took that program away from them and said, go back to your regular school. That's a concern I have, that maybe a charter would help with.
Well, the thing about any of that is any solution that we want to provide or program that we want to provide our students doesn't need to enter the conversation with a charter. We can do any of those things. So if it would be a priority of the district to have a K-8 program that looks at alternative placement of students into some type of program to help their learning at that level, if the need was great enough, that's certainly something that we could do. Remember, so we have people, money, and time. Those are our resources. So if we have a need where a student's needs aren't being met at any level, in my viewpoint, we would want to be exploring what options or programming there are out there that we can have to help make sure those kids are successful in their learning. We want to make sure that we're keeping them at grade level, learning how to read and do math, so that when they get to the high school level, they have all sorts of options. For example, earning college credit, and again, I'm in some of these meetings and I hear, I think we got to remember to celebrate where we're at too. Because Lincoln High School has some amazing programs in place that most schools don't. We have 140 kids working as youth apprentices in our community, where our businesses get a firsthand glance at how great our kids are. We have a record number of kids earning college credit for us, but we blow the state average away. So similarly, if we have gaps of kids at the middle level, I'm going to say elementary might be hard. I don't know that there's the volume of kids, but if we're dealing with middle school kids that need a different way to learn, then it would be on our schools and us to create programming that can meet their needs, regardless of whether it would be through a charter or not. We have the ability to create anything we want to help kids.
A little bit what Biff was saying, but in the past, we didn't even start collecting data on at-risk kids until 5th and 6th grade. So you can have K1, 2, 3, 4, but you don't even start collecting data on at-riskness until 6th grade, 5th and 6th grade. So we aren't really going to have a strong population to identify. We all know who's going to be at risk, but those state mandated programs really don't start until 5th and 6th grade. Yeah. We have to really start drawing that information in. So, and as we get at 5th and 6th grade, we have a pretty good idea who's going to be tracking up there. So, yeah.
Well, and one of the things I'm looking most excited about with McKinley visioning is that I don't believe in the last several years there's really any effort to go into the middle schools to say, hey, this is another option that you have for your high school programming. If you're not excited about Lincoln High School, we have this option, and it's going to highlight some different ways of learning through the project-based piece, through that, and then of course meeting the needs of kids who may decide, hey, I'm going to go to Lincoln, but then things don't work out so hot and they end up behind in credits. And I just feel like, my viewpoint at this point would be, let's make sure we get a McKinley reestablished with this programming at that level to meet those needs, while simultaneously, maybe we take a look and have a middle school conversation. I wouldn't advocate for like a K-8 type of anything, because it's really hard to like pin down what you can do, and it's likely not going to be the same programming for that wide range of kids. I think my suggestion would be having a conversation starting at the middle school building administrative level with their counseling teams to say, how many kids are we talking about? And if we can identify enough, then we go talk to my friend Mike Nault, where we say, if these 30 kids aren't in classrooms at Washington, how do we take an FTE that we currently have, move it into a program that can help those kids learn in a different way? That's what I would recommend.
Not 30 kids at Washington.
No.
Not Washington.
No.
Not Washington. Wilson, he's saying maybe.
I should have said at the middle school. All right.
To summarize, there's an amplitude of opportunity in Manitowoc Public School District. We're lacking the motivation at times. That's what I'm going to summarize with what you said.
In terms of?
In terms of opportunity for many different courses, many different programs, advanced placement, all different things, just the motivations to get the.
Well, connecting certain students to those, right? So like, it's hard to make sure. So here's the thing. If you're a kid and you want to take advantage of those opportunities, you're probably going to need to be up on credits when you go into your junior year, right? So the thing we try so hard to do at the 9th and 10th grade levels, remind kids that your job is here as a student and you're transitioning to high school. Now, when you fail a class, it matters because you're not getting credits. And if you're not getting credits, you're going to take away your opportunities to go out into the community and work half-time. I would tell the kids in an attendance conversation when I'd meet with them and their parents as 9th graders, listen, you're just told me you want to be an electrician. If you want to be an electrician, I can tell you how you can get your best shot at that and learn it early. It's by coming to school and staying on top of your credits. And you say you don't like school. So what if I could entice you into only having to go half-time when you're a junior so you can go work for a contractor in this city and learn the trade that you're really excited about? That's how I would try to motivate kids. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But yes, I mean, there's choices that kids make, and constantly our school counseling teams and our ACP people who work with our kids are trying to help them make good decisions. But yes, it is a factor. We look at our scholarship applications every year, which is one of those things that we had to report on there. And I'm always shocked at how many students don't fill out a scholarship application. I mean, you're talking about, they say money doesn't grow on trees. Well, the money comes out of the foundation like it's a tree. If you just apply for it, you have a chance, right? So that's a frustrating piece. You have to try to connect the kids to those opportunities.
That's why I'm so proud of having the one decision that the 9th graders are actually at the Lincoln campus. Physically, I think means that it's just such an important thing for them to understand that, the credits are starting to add up or not add up. And I think there was a disproportionality of when students were at the middle school in 9th grade and not seeing the actual effects of getting ahead in 9th grade instead of losing that potential earnings of credits. So that's one thing that I think is really great.
What's our drop dead date on this? Is it?
If you choose to, okay, so we have a letter. If you choose to disband, there's a letter drafted. It has to be filed and delivered by the end of June.
Right, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, that's your drop dead time.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I have not heard a motion. I wanted to make sure we all understood. We can roll this out.
If you roll it to June, that's fine.
But at that point, we have to make a decision.
Correct.
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the director, Mr. Tennis, on the McKinley Academy.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Shaw and we have a second from Mr. Hanson. Any further discussion on that? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, is McKinley on board with this? The people there?
So we've had some very good talks. Principal Bontra's right here. You could ask her, her opinion. I think that there's, in anything, there'll be some mixed opinions. What I learned from talking with their board is that they completely understand where we are and why we're where we are. But you know, when you're involved in something and that you're invested in, it's hard to say, yeah, well, I want you to end me, right? Like, who wants that, right? So, my point to them was that in no way are we looking to end you because of the board. We're really looking to try to actually take advantage of your passion for these kids and turn it into, you know, an advisory board situation where they can still remain involved in the helping plan and execute as an advisory board, to still stay active, right? No one came out and said, I'm completely against this. No one came out and said that I'm completely for it. We had a very good conversation where we answered some questions. They shared some feelings. I think everybody understands the decision at play here. I can't speak for their board on whether if they voted or not, they would say, yeah, we're in support of being disbanded. But I know that Stephanie, you know, it concurs with the recommendation through our conversation.
Right, Stephanie?
Yeah, we need programming for at-risk kids, whether it's a charter or programs or.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. And absolutely, I was going to say, in fact, I have it written right down here. Ending the charter is not ending the program.
Correct.
The last thing we want to do is end these opportunities for kids for whom the standard model is just not working and we can find something else that will work for them. And certainly what else we don't want to lose is the great value that the enthusiasm and interest that the governing board brings to McKinley. And McKinley, like so many other things in the district, suffers from, I think, a lack of awareness that it's a possibility. You know, it's just one of those places where we have to keep letting people know about what's possible and improving it as we go. I think it's an attractive thing that will help us attract students.
And again, if the motion passes, I am committed to be working with that board through this year because they will be in governance for the for this next school year. And I promised them that. And so I will be happy to work with them, just to make sure that we're tying up all ends and have a good transition into it being governed by this board, which if this motion does pass, essentially would be, take place at July 1st of that next year. So 2025, July 1st, officially.
Okay, so all of those in favor signify.
You made the second.
Sean made the motion.
You did the
And-
second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Moving on to B. Mr. Nault will present proposed 4.12% consumer price index increase for all non-teaching staff and stipend positions, et cetera.
Good evening, everyone. I think it was 3 weeks ago, the last board meeting, you approved a 4.12% consumer price index increase for teaching staff. And if you remember correctly, when I shared with you the CISA 5 survey result of about, 120, 140 school districts, the vast majority of districts were 4% or a little bit above. And also the vast majority of districts had, basically, if it was a 4% increase CPI or 4.12 across the board, it was your teaching staff, your support staff, your administrators, it was your entire staff. So with all of that, I'm recommending that that you approve the 4.12% consumer price index for all non-teaching staff and all stipend positions. That would be July 1 of 24 through June 30th of 25.
Do we have such a motion?
I will move to do that.
Motion from Mr. Hanson, second from Mr. Spalding. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Abstention. And we have one abstention. Oh, yeah, I should have realized that. And we have an abstention. So barring the abstention, that passes. Barring the abstention, it passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to new business. And he's back.
I'm back. I have two textbooks here tonight. One is a Lincoln High School science textbook. You approved a brand new class at Lincoln High School for next year called Forensic Science. And the group went through several texts and came up with this one as their recommendation. So I have the science one. I also have an advanced placement statistics, which I looked at briefly. I couldn't do many of the problems, so that's why it was brief. But this one is also just an updated edition, similar to what we asked you to do with the psychology book. So these would be up for really just you granting permission for us to begin the 30-day public review on these two textbooks.
Make a motion to accept the review period for those two textbooks.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Is there any digital copies at all?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know, Stephanie's here. Do you know if there's a digital on the
I'm not
map?
sure if there's a digital on the AP stats, but I know that they have digital resources. And one of the things is there's a lot of hands-on activities for them to do to get ready for their AP testing and they get feedback right away. There's videos. So there's plenty of online resources for students and teachers.
You might find that helpful, Mr. Tennis.
You might need to do some of them.
Running your CSI forensics class at Lincoln?
Go ahead.
Looking forward to 2025 in the future here, I would like to see it, maybe we can start, not in this particular textbooks, but in general, to doing more than just having it, at central office on display or availability to look at for 30 days. I would like to see it, the public being able to actually have a digital format of something. I understand there's copyright, but we need to somehow be able to have it more accessible to all community members. Otherwise, it's becoming outdated at this point. It's my opinion.
Is there a way to do that?
So we've actually asked publishers, right? So here's the issue we have. The issue we have is that publishers are happy to give us copies of texts, and they're happy to give us logins that we can go and try stuff out with. What they're not going to be okay with, though, is us giving out their publication to everyone for, to have access to it. I mean, I've asked several publishers, Houghton Mifflin, McGraw-Hill, I can probably get you like a demo, like if someone who would come to me and say, I don't want to look at the hard text, I would like to look at this digitally. I could probably find a way to make that happen under some demo login account. But in terms of us saying, hey, here's this, here's the link, go check it out, it's unfortunately not going to happen because the publishers won't allow it.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. But I'm happy to help people get access to this if they'd like to review it.
Like we would legally save a copy of the whole book.
But for example, like I could give you, if you said to me after tonight's science presentation that you'd really like to see what this looks like, I can get you into the demo account so you could look and see what it looked like from the teacher perspective, from the student perspective, with the resources that it has. I could get that.
That's not neat, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah.
I can check it out myself, but I'm talking about community members that are maybe involved and look at stuff, understand what's out there. Maybe like a watermarked one or something, just a digital version of it that is obviously not be able to copy. That's all I'm trying to avoid.
And I'm also always happy to ask them. I just haven't been told yes yet on that one.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, that is unanimously adopted. Going on to the elementary science curriculums.
Right. Very excited to talk with you about Amplify Science for several reasons. One,
Hey, I have a question. So we did the science.
A and B.
You did them together?
Yes.
Okay,
A
I'm
and
sorry,
B
I missed it.
together.
I
That's okay.
apologize. Thank you.
so this journey in the district started in October. We met with a small group of science teachers to review some science curriculum. I want to stress that we have not adopted an elementary science curriculum in our district in a very long time. Currently, we have piece in place called Mystery Science. Our teachers use this resource to create lessons that are not uniform throughout the district. This is an attempt to help us have a guaranteed viable curriculum that can help us move the needle, continue to move the needle on our students' reading. We have to have good curriculum in place for our teachers to use so that they can help kids learn better. And what I will tell you is I'm not only excited by the improvements that I'm seeing in the students' learning numbers, but I'm also super excited on the accelerant that I believe when we get our supported curriculums like social studies and science, which we have not had at this level, in a way that we can guarantee that students, whether they're at Jefferson or Madison or Monroe, are getting the curriculum the same across the board. That's an exciting place to be because these new curriculum also do a good job of these cross-cutting concepts and skills that our kids are learning in their literacy program. So I hope that you'll notice that in this presentation. We had a group of teachers who vetted the curriculum and said we want to pilot it. We began the pilot here as I updated you earlier this winter and spring. Our plan is really to try to create cultivate curiosity, critical thinking, and deep understanding of the natural world among elementary students, empowering them to be lifelong learners. This curriculum, as students walk through the curriculum, not as students in first grade, but as engineers and as scientists who are inquiring and learning through this idea of inquiry-based learning. Our goals with this curriculum are to enhance the integration between our literacy program and our other subjects, foster inquiry-based learning, promote STEM literacy and digital fluency, supporting diverse learners and engaging families and community partners. This is the scope and sequence of Amplify Science from grades 1 through 5. These are the units that the students will learn about at each of those grade levels. So you'll see in first grade, starting with animal and plant defenses, they work through different types of sciences. Amplify Science is recently, it's been around since 2014, recently has some research-based articles written about it because they have seen student achievement grow in districts who've used Amplify Science in the area of science, because this is one of the very, very few curriculum at this level for science that gets green across the board from Ed Reports. And the reason it does is because it absolutely follows the NGSS science standards. They have done an excellent job of incorporating them at every level. There are other curriculum out there that receive some green level, but each grade level of this curriculum receives a recommendation from Ed Reports. When we're looking at the instructional model, this is also something that is a huge positive in my book because it's really asking kids to take a huge role in their learning. So do, talk, read, write, and visualize. It's rooted in this research-based interactiveness where students use do, talk, read, write approach. Their study indicates that they significantly outperformed other students receiving their science instruction in a more traditional way. This curriculum also offers supports for our students who are our EL students who may be learning English as a second language, and it provides our teachers the resources they need to help those kids be successful in their learning. The program components on the student side of things are several things. One, hands-on. There's experimental kits at each grade level that they'll do hands-on experimenting in the classroom. Obviously reading, writing, and then there's an app that will be loaded into their Chromebook where they'll be able to also do digital activities as well. From the teacher side of things, there are print teacher resources, digital teacher resources. They also have display and hands-on materials that are included that come in these unit bins for each grade level. This is just a minute and a half. It's short, but This is a specific strategy that Amplify Science uses to improve students' vocabulary. And I wanted to share this because I think that, you know, as we're thinking about how we're supporting SFA in terms of improving student achievement, how important it is to have those connections to these other areas of study. Well, it's really good, but I can't hear it. So I urge you to take a look at it. You have it in the thing, and for whatever reason, the sound isn't working. Basically, the kids are making connections. You saw the yarn up there between the vocabulary words and which units they've had in the past, and then also the concepts and how they're related to each other. So a very hands-on way to do that and scaffold their learning. We, again, piloted this with a number of teachers throughout the district. Here's a list of the teachers, and a big, huge thank you to all of them, not only for their work in piloting this and trying it out and being brave and doing something new in the middle of the school year where they're already doing something new, but also for the feedback that they were able to give us on the curriculum and the training really involved, because these folks also participated in a 3-hour training that got them ready to teach their units, which was a taste of what our entire elementary team will get when we train them to use this curriculum in the pre-in-service days leading up to next school year. The feedback, and again, these were just a few that jumped out at me. So far, my students have loved the lessons, pretty interactive and seem excited about what they're doing and learning about. Overall, I've enjoyed the curriculum and like how it's very laid out and user-friendly. I also really like the slides that go along with them. Another comment, curriculum complements SFA due to the literacy component within Amplify. And then Amplify offers the meat and potatoes that Mystery Science is lacking. Now, I will say those are positive comments. Some of the concerns that they had were that a couple of the so it's interesting when you ask a group of 15 teachers what they think on something. Some of them felt like that with these new resources, it was easier for them to prepare, while a couple felt like it was more difficult for them to prepare. One of the things that they also brought up as a concern was in terms of time. Our current structure of time requires our teachers to go back and forth between social studies and science for 30 minutes. Given those concerns, we had our Heidi recently worked with our administrators at the elementary level to find in the schedule an extra 10 minutes that we can move 40 minutes instead of 30 for the combo of science and social studies to help make this. They were saying that they were also with some of these lessons running out of time. So we think by adding those 10 minutes, it'll significantly help some of the areas of concern that they saw in the pilot. We're excited about Amplify Science. Price tag you saw in the memo. Amplify Science 1st through 5th grade for 6 years is a cost of $336,000, which comes to $56,000 annually, $9,000 roughly annually per school. And if you're looking at it as how much per student, $10.16 annually per student is what the cost is. This is something that has been budgeted for out of the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
I'd be curious to know, I mean, I like, maybe it's a presentation because it looks really, really good. I love the fact that it ties in with SFA, especially with the literacy component. But I'd be curious to know as to why they thought, or a few people thought it might be harder to prepare with more, I guess, you know, material. I would imagine it'd be easier. So I'd like to know where their thinking was on that. Is it limiting their creativity as a teacher? Or, because that's something that I was always concerned with, even with SFA. Is a teacher still going to be able to be a teacher? You know what I mean? So
I think I may know. And again, this is my take on it.
Sure.
Whenever you get something new like this and it's a lot, it takes a little bit to get through it and figure out how it works. So yep, if I'm getting this and the plethora of resources and associated resources with this in comparison to what they're using now is much greater. Plus, remember what they're using now, they're used to using now. So I believe that in those cases or instances, it was a lot about the fact that this is a lot to get through. And so, especially when you're first doing something like that, that would be my.
Change can be hard.
Correct. Sure. And I only say that as a hypothesis, as a result of what I heard from some of the others on the team, which was, I don't agree. I think it's easier to prep because these resources are awesome. So I think it really depends on the person. And as the teacher gets more comfortable with the materials.
And it will change.
Correct. I believe so.
That's good. That's kind of what I was looking to hear.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve.
Get a first and second.
Actually, okay, will you do the second?
Sure.
Okay. Second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimously adopted. We go on to D, opposed to one, full-time equivalent. Thank you, sir. Full-time equivalent for a buildings and grounds clerical position.
Yes. A couple of months ago, Mike, well, I don't know if you need to or not. Well, a couple of months ago, Mike Schwartz approached me and said, hey, I could really use some clerical help, clerical assistance. And at that point in time, I said, well, why don't you construct a job description, of course, and we'll take a peek at that. In the meantime, HR will go out, we'll look at comparables in the district and I'm sorry, in the conference and outside of the district, So we did all that. And when you look at the supporting document that I provided you, you can see that Fox River Classic Conference and the 8 schools, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 schools are listed there. And visually you can tell that at the bottom is Manitowoc. We have right now about less than an hour a day dedicated for B&G clerical help. And as you're all well aware, that everything that we've been learning in the last 3 months, the construction projects are going to be much more than normal. Mike's life is getting to be where it's like Mach 2, so to speak. Fast-paced, getting a lot done, and it's not going to change probably for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, given all the projects that I think we have in front of us. So we looked at the athletic conference. A lot of times, your athletic conference is a very good predictor of basically a comparable district to you. So we looked at that, and as you can see in there, the vast majority of the districts have dedicated clerical support for their B&G department, the Civil Services Department. We also looked at comparable school districts, and as you can see there, once again, the vast majority of school districts have some, if not 1.0, some clerical support for their B&G department. You can see too, we had three districts that didn't respond. That's disappointing when we don't get that. That's something else. Now you may say over at the right-hand side, well, Mike, why did you even put the smaller school districts in there? What does that have to do with it? That's a very good question. But what we did was we have a database of a lot of the districts on the northeast side of the state here, and of course we fired out to all their HR people and stuff like that. So we put it out there. What I learned basically was if your district probably have about 2,000 or less students, you pretty much have no dedicated clerical support for your B&G department. If you're a district that's comparable to us, you're going to have some dedicated support. And I also, when I saw Appleton and Fond du Lac and some of the little bit bigger districts that we have, they definitely have some, the support of the big district. So given that we're going to have a number of projects coming up, given that we think Mike needs some clerical support, and given that our comparable school districts provide some dedicated clerical support, I'm recommending that we approve a 1.0 12-month clerical person for the B&G department going forward.
I'll make a motion to accept his recommendation to create a clerical 1.0 FTE for B and G.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Thank you both. Any other discussion? Questions?
Estimated cost?
I forgot to put that on there.
Yeah.
I'm thinking probably thinking about 40,000 maybe for the salary, and then depending on whether the person takes health insurance or not. But let's just go with the max, another, health insurance, WRS, 70-ish, 65, somewhere in that vein.
Mr. Spelman?
I was just thinking about when we first came onto the board, and there was some restructuring that was done with building and grounds, and this was I guess basically an elimination of the director for building and grounds, and we chose to make it a managerial or supervisory role in that aspect. So I'm not saying he doesn't need it, and I'm going to vote for it. And I just want to caution everybody as we continue to throw money at a position that we originally decided to change for a reason in the first place. So, but either way, measuring the fact that we do have a lot being added on to this with building and grounds and everything, I totally support it. Let's just keep this in mind.
Could I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Prior to the restructuring, we had a director of building and grounds. We had a custodial supervisor also. We had 2 dedicated FTEs there. When we restructured, we went from the director position to the manager of building and grounds, and we did not replace the custodial supervisor. So in some respects, this FTE is going to have certain job duties from that position in this job description that.
That's good. Like I said, I know he needs it. I just want to make sure that we're all cautioned of where we're putting them at.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the 2 FTEs we had. We reduced.
Correct. Understand.
Yeah.
Mr. Vestoga, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, of course. I was just going to add, I hear what you're saying and I agree with what you're saying, but the other thing to keep in mind is that, in a relatively short period of time, Mike's accomplished quite a bit in this role as far as getting stuff done. And further, if you look at the next couple of years ahead of us, short term, likely we're going to go down that path of, alone, right, to get some projects going. It's going to increase his workload even more. So I'm in full support of this position and keep up the great work. Thank you.
I am as well.
My only comment is, it's about a net savings of almost $100,000 between the old and the new, and the work is being done at a high quality. So I think it's a great job for you, what you did. Great job, the superintendent as well.
Absolutely.
And the person we hired.
Mike was a great hire. No trouble.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Hearing none, that passes unanimously. All right, next it's the Rahr Memorial School Forest Endowment Fund. Probably the easiest one on the agenda. We have our school forest coordinator here, so we'll be happy to answer questions if you have any. I do serve on, the school forest board? Advisory board, yes. A committee, advisory committee. And real simply, this is something that's been being talked about since, I think we started talking about this last September, didn't we? August or September. And gone through all the steps, talked with foundation, talked with finance, went and got approval from the foundation. There's no matching funds. This is to create a special projects and endowment fund that the foundation would then put the money into a discrete line that would help the Rahr Memorial School Forest going forward. Hopefully, if it can build up high enough, continually for year after year. If it gets built high enough, we can use the endowment part of it to assist with costs of the school forest annually. Unfortunately, we just missed the NASCAR Give-a-thon day by one day with this, but maybe next year. So fingers crossed. Any questions?
Is there any action with this?
You would need to approve it because officially the foundation cannot set up the discrete line without the approval of the board. So you're approving creating the special projects and endowment fund.
You got it? I'll second it.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I won't be saying anything either way. Any opposed, say nay.
Abstain.
Yeah.
I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining too? Okay. So it passes 4-0. Okay. So now we have the first read of policy revisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah. I would hope in the future we move these to the Personnel and Policy Committee. Mr. Tennis and I had a discussion, and at this rate, the way that we're doing this, it's going to take how long to get through all of it?
It was 3.5 years if there were no further updates, which we know there's an update coming in July, so.
Aren't you glad you stayed until this moment, just to hear that?
So explain, when we were talking, and you'll say it better than I, but we have a way to maybe do this to get rid of some of the boilerplate things. Can he talk or not?
Oh, okay, well, all right, this would be a point of information. So
Yes, yes.
Yes,
So-
because it's not actually these things.
So what we talked about was having some strategies that we could employ to get through some of these policies in a little bit more expedient way. Obviously, through the Personnel and Policy Committee would be an appropriate place to start. There's a policy on our current books that allows for the superintendent to make corrections to policy when it doesn't have anything, when it's changing the meaning. So for example, renumbering sections, a statute number changed. Currently, there's 27 policies out of the 200 that remain for us to review that could be corrected. So we're working on getting those set so that Jim could send them to you. It's basically, he just has to show you and you have to say, yep, these are corrections. So that's 27. There's another significant number of policies, we estimate between 40 and 60, that we could do this, sort of coin this term, mirroring. In other words, the policy we have on the books and the recommendations that Neola are giving us can be matched up to be the same. In other words, what we could do is pass a slew of policies that basically says, oh, we're passing these policies, and really what they are the same policies we already have. So in other words, we're just updating them to be current, keeping the same meaning of the policies. So we could do between 40 and 60 that way. Then there's another group of policies that we have that need to be reviewed but may require some significant changes based on new recommendations or new laws. Those will pull through the committee where we can have those brought similar to this fashion. Another thing that came to our attention when we reviewed the policy, which is, I believe, one of the things you're probably looking at up there. And if that's one of the ones that are probably going to, in a few minutes, get referred to your committee. One of the options on that policy is to change our way of doing business, which is a current way of business, which is if a policy comes to you and you approve it or you amend it or you just say, yeah, it's the next one. It goes first read to second read. That's a preference choice of a district. Even if it would be for the time being for us to get caught up, we can make that 2 meeting rule a 1 meeting rule by simply changing that policy. In other words, if we wanted to be a little more expedient, and instead of it taking 2 months to get a slew of, let's say that we were bringing 15 or 20 of those policies when we get that committee up and running, we could do it in a matter of a month instead of 2 months. You still have the option, obviously, to amend, change, pass, or not pass, but instead of doing it twice, it would be once. So that might be something you want to consider as the committee in looking at that particular policy. And I know that I talked with Mr. Abel about it because he was saying, I don't see anywhere here where we have to do the 2, which it isn't clear, but it's found in the little paragraph there. Yeah, so that's another option that we have. But we're trying to strategize how we can make some of these policies. Not that we're trying to push them through and not pay attention to them, but just the fact that we're sort of putting ourselves a little bit at risk by not having some of the updated policies. We just got to try to do this as expedient and as responsible as we can.
So that being said, that's what the committee will try to do. We're gonna still have to read and go through them and, but we thought it'd be good to shorten this process. Because the vast majority of the policies are not gonna be as divisive as some of the other ones. So we might as well just get them in the books. So we will bring those out of committee when we meet, and
The first one, we'll probably have to get through the ones that are gonna probably get referred there, and then we'll generate those corrections. We can get those corrected ones done right away, and then get that mirroring list out within the next month.
Okay, so to nutshell,
yes,
and by nutshell, I mean prompt you to move. You are saying you're going to refer everything from F and G to the Personnel and Policy Committee?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Yeah.
For the Personnel and Policy, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second. Okay.
We gotta read them anyway. So.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
What was the motion exactly?
The motion was to refer all the policies G to the Personnel and Policy Committee for review.
But it still wouldn't be approved or anything until they're.
Right, until they come to the board. They still come to the board.
When they come to the board, if you have a concern, you still have the right.
Correct. To amend and change it, right. But basically, the first steps are happening at the Personnel and Policy.
It would come through those first reads, second reads, whatever, all that stuff would go through us on the Personnel Policy Committee. And then
it comes
the approval would be,
Yeah,
brought to the board. I mean, that would be something that if any of us had concerns, we could bring that up.
You can amend it at the time, absolutely.
Trying to get it so we don't stay on regular board meetings till 1 a.m. like we sometimes do.
No, we've never been here till
9 on, 11 o'clock.
Let's not
We
have.
have been here until 11.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, I'm just in the spirit of, I mean, we're discussing it, right? So in the spirit of trying to get these done in an expedient manner, as we mentioned, I'm all in favor of that, maybe moving forward, but why don't we just crank through what we got tonight? And then do that going forward.
Well, it's still on the agenda for tonight.
I think we have to.
Well, the motion is to refer all the policies under F and G to the Personnel and Policy Committee. So what you're saying is you would vote no against that motion?
Yeah, I would suggest that we should take these, because they're here, and then keep these moving, and then I'm amenable to doing that going forward for new policies to.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, so the motion is to refer all the policies in F and G, that would be 14 of them, to Personnel and Policy Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. Could we see the nays? I know these were the ayes, so that motion fails. So do we have another motion?
A motion to continue with our agenda and refer in the future.
It was tied, correct?
It was tied.
It was tied.
3-3.
Yeah.
3-3 motion to pass.
So it fails.
New motion is that we finish our agenda and send that F and G in the future. Make sense?
Say that again.
So this was a proposal before. They wanted to go through and do it right here. And there's somebody who voiced a concern that they wanted to finish it the way we had it here. I'm like, oh, either way, that sounds good to me. So that didn't pass. Now I'm making this almost the same motion, except for tonight, we're going to finish this agenda list. But in the future.
You don't need a motion for that. You just.
Well, that's what we're looking to do. If you have a motion to do something particular with one or any of these items.
No, we'd like to go through them.
No, we wanted to go through these, I guess. Which I don't have a problem. If anybody specifically wants to go through them, they have the right to. And they're on our agenda, so let's do it.
Right, so you would move that we approve, see, you have to move that we approve one, then we go through it.
All right, so.
Oh,
You
okay.
understand what I'm saying?
I got you.
Yeah.
No, understand.
So did you want to move to approve 1 through 5, or did you want to do them individually? Because
I'm doing the
Okay, either way.
for you guys, like anybody who feels they want to. So specifically, do you got ones that we want to discuss? I don't.
The only one there was a couple with that public comment one I wanted to talk about.
Okay, why don't you approve all the other, make a motion to approve all the other ones you don't want to talk about?
we're currently on F.
All right, on F.
1 through 5.
We'd like to approve, I motion to approve 1, 3, 4, and 5 on F. 1, 3, 4, and 5, leaving out 2.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on 1, 3, 4, 5? No? Okay, then all those in favor of approving them signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed signify by saying nay. Nay. I guess it's just me.
Can you say which ones approved? 1, 2.
1, 3, 4, and 5 have just been approved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now, any other motions?
We're discussing.
Still on F.
Well, we got to go through 2, right?
We're gonna make a motion to approve it.
Okay, I'll motion to approve it
I'll
to
second.
open up to open up our comments.
Okay, we have a motion to approve public comment at board meetings, policy 0167.3, and we have second? Second. No,
You say that's fine.
third. That's okay.
Discussion.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question on, looking at letter H, where it talks about participants shall address only topics within the legitimate jurisdiction of the board. What is in the legitimate jurisdiction of the board? How is that specifically defined? Is that cleared up anywhere?
Yeah, I guess. I never thought about that.
To whom are you directing that
I
question?
guess to anyone, anyone who would know the answer.
So I believe the reason this clause is in there is so that, for example, let's just say someone came tonight to talk about the art in the park that's gonna happen in June, right? Like, it's not germane to anything the district has control over. So if someone comes in and starts talking about something that the district really has no jurisdiction over, the chair can rule them out of order.
Has to be in the purview of the Manitowoc Public School District.
Correct.
Or the controlling duties of the school district. And if it's not in that purview, then it can be
shut down.
shut down. So if I start talking about the music at Country USA, right, that's public, shut down.
This policy really does give a lot of authority to the president to enforce. There are some things they can, so that would just be the explanation I would give on that one.
I've always liked the lateral leniency when it comes to public speaking, and it does kind of crunch down on here a little bit when it talks about the participants being able to make, they're limited to 2 minutes and 20 minutes in total, when we've always allotted the first 30 minutes to public input. And depending upon, like today, we had only 3 people. Should we give them 5 minutes, which is plenty of time for all of them to exhaust everything that they wanted to say? I personally like that. I don't like stifling anybody from saying the things that they want to say, or because not everybody speaks as well or as eloquently as others, so it takes them a little bit longer. I personally don't believe in the 2 minute. I could say the first 30 minutes, but limiting them to 2 minutes, I think we should just leave that up to the president to decide how long each meeting. That's just my own opinion, though.
So I would make a motion to amend the 20-minute cap on public input and make it a 30-minute.
Keep it the way it is right now.
Well, yeah, but it's trying to be changed.
Correct.
So under K, you would change it from 20 to 30?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
We have a second for the motion. On the motion alone, to change it from 20 to 30, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that is so amended.
On E, I'd like to motion to, it says right now, each statement made by participant shall be limited to 2 minutes duration. I would like to change that each statement made by the participant should be predetermined by the board chair in accommodation to the 30-minute rule.
Okay. So we have that motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second.
So what you're saying, if we've got 10 people speaking, then he sets the limit. If you got 2 people speaking, he sets the limit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
My
sense.
only question is if we have, let's say we have a board meeting and we're discussing building and we're gonna talk about building a new high school. Does he have the option as president or whoever is president to lengthen that 30-minute public input? Just thinking if there's a large group of people, just we give them the option to speak.
And I don't know if it's in this new one, but I know in the other one, all of these rules were subject to change by the board.
Right, that's, I just want to make sure that.
Right.
got that.
So I guess it's kind of moot as to whether or not we're changing these, but I'd like to have it out in the open, and I believe the public will accept it. But either way.
Or otherwise directed by the board president or deputy.
Correct. So either way, but my motion is still up that we change E.
I called question.
Okay, got it.
Well,
I'll second the question.
he seconds the call. Believe it or not, again, you guys are just trying to mess with what I was going to do in a few minutes. Believe it or not, we now have to vote on calling the question. And the vote to call the question has to be a 2/3 vote, which I looked up for 7 people and we have 6, but that math I can do. It has to be 4 or more. That I can do in my head. 7, I had to use the calculator on my phone.
Which is still a majority.
Yeah. Yes. So all those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Great, the question is called, that passes. So all those in favor of this amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is so amended.
I make a motion to approve public comment policy 0167.3. Just read it as amended.
Okay, that's the first reading. We have the motion to accept it as amended.
Second.
We have the second. Any further discussion?
I got a quick.
That's the first reading, though.
Yeah.
Correct.
First reading. Yep. Shruggy.
Looking at letter H, and this is probably a lead question or for any of you guys, if you know it, but, just in the spirit of free speech and wanting to preserve that as much as you can and maintaining order in the meetings, what would stop if there was another event like COVID, right? Where a couple years ago, we all remember what happened here. And, for a while, there was a number of board members that felt that that decision should be made by, the state or the federal government, whatever authority, medical authorities, whatever. Would that in any way limit people from speaking about that in a meeting?
Will you allow me to answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely not, because the decision to follow the recommendation of whether it is county or state or national health officials is the decision that the board made. So talking about that would absolutely still fall within the purview of the duties and powers of the board. So you could not say, no, you can't talk about that.
Okay, yeah, that's really where my concern was. I just want to make sure we're not.
But if somebody comes in and says, I think we need to change all our red stop signs to green and gold because I'm a Packers fan, we'd say, well, that's a swell idea, but the school board doesn't get to decide the color of the stop signs.
I'll second that. The green
Well,
and gold.
thank you.
The green and gold.
I will shoot that down.
Yes, you want orange and blue.
The bears.
All right, yes.
One more question. So how are we gonna enforce these rules? Because I remember in the past, signage and banners were raised up. You're gonna be the czar for saying, please take those down?
Officially, that is part of the duties of the president, is to ensure that people comport themselves respectfully and that they abide by the rules. I think the best way always in these situations is to ask people. What you don't want to do is start off squishing people. So if somebody was to come up and address something that I thought was not within our areas of oversight, I would say, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing how this relates to the duties of the school board. Please make sure you confine your remarks to areas appropriate for school board oversight. And then we would if it was the stop sign thing, and then if they then said, okay, but the school board ought to be able to decide that about the stop signs, I would say, well, but we can't. So I'm going to have to ask you to talk about us or go talk to the city. Understand? Yeah. Okay. So we have the motion and the second to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that is approved. Now we're on G. Numbers 1 through 9. I will personally move to refer those to the Personnel and Policy Committee. It took me a minute. So I'm moving, we refer them. So I have a second anyway. Who seconded? Somebody, oh, Mr. Shaw, thank you. No discussion on that?
Why do you want to move them and not move through them right now?
Well, because these are brand new ones. And that's really what the Personnel and Policy Committee's for.
And these are just introductions
Right.
anyway,
Yeah,
so
there's no
technically,
action.
we don't, I mean,
Nothing's been
it's just approving to be.
Right, and in the future, we would expect that that's where they would first go.
I don't see how that, moving that, though, changes the direction of our meeting, because like literally, there's no action on this. This is just the introduction. We don't approve this or nothing.
Yeah, these are
moved.
just introductions.
Yeah, but they
so-
would get
Pardon me?
moved they have to get moved
These
somewhere.
would likely, so you could probably do one of two things. You could, if they're on the agenda tonight in their phase, they would move to a first read
And
after
policy.
introduction, but we would just bring them to the committee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no act, like as of right now, there is no action. on it.
Correct, no action.
We basically just move on.
And we could just do it without the motion. It's just cleaner that way since it was on the agenda.
Correct. But, yeah.
So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. I seconded it.
Yeah.
Aye.
So everybody, I think, just voted, but.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm going to ask you to do that again. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, those will be moved over to the Personnel and Policy Committee. Now we're on to H. What I've really been looking forward to, and we didn't do this for our friends at WMT, it's Policy 1240, the evaluation of the superintendent. Policy 1240 requires us to state that we are starting the process of the summative evaluation of the superintendent at the first meeting in May, and that process is concluded no later than the last meeting in June. So I just want to apprise you that we're starting that process.
Correct.
I will be sending out, in case of Mr. Shaw, he wasn't here, and in case you haven't kept it, the formative assessment that was shared with us by the board president I think that was the very beginning of February when that one was concluded, so that you can look that over. And then certainly, thoughts and considerations as we start to put that together for the summative assessment that will come sometime late in June. Got it? Just a point of information for everybody. And next, under other business, remarks from the board president. Corrections and clarifications, as you just saw earlier when somebody called the question, last month, because historically it's been done this way, in Manitowoc, when somebody called the question, we normally just vote on the question. The correct procedure is you have a call the question, you have a second on the call the question, and then you take a 2/3 vote. So I'm making sure now I'm keeping my quick and easy guidelines to Robert's Rules of Order. Thank you, Catherine McDaniel, wherever you are, who put this together for me years ago. Got the big Roberts in case I messed something else up, but I messed up. I'm sorry. I actually got emails about it.
No
I'm
need.
thrilled that we have people who love Robert's Rules of Order more than I do.
Is that whole book on Robert's Rules?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
If you ever want to borrow it, you know, like if you're having trouble sleeping.
I like to put it in that together file.
Okay. So that's what I've got. We have a possible meeting on May 28th. See what happens there, and we definitely have one on June 11th. And don't forget all the special events coming up.
We have a personnel committee meeting.
I need to know many meetings.
Oh, personnel
Personnel
policy, you want to talk about?
3:30.
At 3:30.
3:30.
And we're gonna do finance and budget this.
It's the first Monday of every month.
Sure,
That way it'll come before the meeting.
When's that one?
I can hear, sorry.
Not just you.
Why are you not keeping up? No, I'm just kidding.
Finance and facilities is Monday at 5.
This coming Monday?
Does that work?
Curriculum and instruction will be Monday, June 3rd at, I think we said 5,
Right.
yeah,
We start at 3:30.
Correct.
on personnel.
Yeah, on first name.
Yeah. 3:30. First month.
So Monday, the 20th, yeah, give me a second here.
So curriculum instruction is at 5.
Correct.
On June 3rd.
So
We're gonna go the
limited
first
amount of
Monday.
time
Okay. And
from 3:30 to 5. We gotta move.
personnel and
It'll be
policy,
fine.
per and poly is what?
We are having.
3:30
On Mondays,
on Monday.
same day.
We
Okay.
do realize Carrie, within our,
Finance, business.
Yeah, we set it up that way for him, yeah.
What's the date on that?
it's hard to get him
So
to
get it done in an hour and a half.
Monday is
Yeah, sure.
20th at 5.
Thank
If
you.
you have a specific agenda item, submit it.
It's the first Monday of the
Oh, I think we talked about it pretty good already.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the whole? Well, because I got dogs, I would say, do I have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Jeff, do you have an agenda for that meeting yet?
Yeah.
Do you have an agenda set up for that meeting yet, or?
It'll be put together